This is, you've seen this statement before. Have all of you seen this statement before? No? This is the essence of the societal changes that could occur. You can imagine every action we take lifting up the least privileged in society, or for sure, not hindering them. And as a result of the way in which we do that, other people follow our example. That glorious way to get for something. And that's what this is about. We have wise for years to accomplish. Now, how does that actually work? So, how do you get your arms around that? Give me some examples. And so that's what Tom and I are going to do. And we selected something from Pieper, who is a practitioner, a consultant person, and has dealt primarily with for-profit companies for a lifetime. For a lifetime. She kind of was not a student of Green Leaf, but boy, she spent a lot of time, as much as she could around it. And she came up with this list, which is a very nice list. There's no this or that or no rules. It doesn't work that way. This is a philosophy. It's an approach to how you can go about doing what you do. And it isn't so much about what you do, it's how you do it. Does that make sense? I may make a profit. I may meet my goals in a not-for-profit of doing so much of whatever I do. But it's the way that I go about doing that that really is the effect on society and the richness for me and everybody around me. So, as I was walking up, Dave and I were kind of met and chatting on the way in. He said, "How'd they get started?" And I said, "Well, that's one of the examples I'm going to use. Tom and I are going to kind of go back and forth. We're going to pick out something." So, the question was, how do you get started? Something started when it didn't exist before. Apparently, it didn't exist, at least not in the formal sense. So let's pick out one of these. Five. Let's pick out number 5. So in the traditional boss-subordinate model, controls information to maintain power. Okay? And we could pick out about 4 of these applied to the example, but we'll just take one. Shares big picture information. Well, how this began is we had the International Servant Leader Conference here in Wisconsin. And in the middle of the conference, it occurred to us, maybe we should ask people in Wisconsin whether they'd like to what they want to do with this. It was a real powerful conference. And so we just made an announcement, one announcement. It wasn't in writing, it wasn't on the program. And we said, anybody, and there was a nice turnout from Wisconsin, but it wasn't thousands of people. The total conference maybe had 500 people at it, but they were from all over the world. We said, anybody in Wisconsin that would like to get together to talk about this, let's get together in the main auditorium after the main session. So we got a board like that, and some people gathered around, and we sent a piece of paper around with names and your email addresses, and we said, what do you want to do anything with this? And so we wrote down on the board what they said. We didn't sit on a committee and tell other people what we thought was a good idea they might do. We asked them, what do you want to do? And it came out very simply. We'd like to meet other people like this. We didn't know other people existed that were interested in this approach to managing. So we said, okay, how do we do that? And so Tom and I kind of said, well, and this is like 9 months later, we got to do something with this. We were given a charge. And how do we implement this? And so, welcome.
Thank you.
And so they said, well, we said, well, why don't we just get together in Milwaukee and in La Crosse? Because La Crosse already had, because of its Masters in Servant Leadership, had a program going that kind of brought people together around that program. And the people that graduated from that program became naturally people in the community that were speaking in this way, thinking in this way. So we had a meeting here, and we had a meeting in La Crosse. Did we have one in Fond du Lac?
Fond du Lac, yeah.
And Fond du Lac. And Fond du Lac for 15 years is trying to get something going. It was kind of ruminating about, but no traction. Tom had traction. We had nothing in Milwaukee. So he said, well, we're going to take somebody that is, we postulated the program. We'll take somebody that's new to this, just coming in, starting, what they're experiencing, somebody that's maybe 10 years and somebody 20 years or more. Organizations or individuals, nonprofits, for-profit, higher education. And any of those could fall into this, under 2 years, 10 years, more than 20. And so that became a formula. And then what we did is when we had the meeting, we had a post-meeting reaction, which you will have here. And we said, what do you think of the meeting, and what do you want to do differently? And that began the whole process. And what is 4 years later, 5 years?
5 years. I think it's our 5th.
This is going in the 5th year. We have short of 2,000 people. We have no website. We have short of 2,000 people that are interested in receiving emails and come to these meetings. And we now have 5 cities. And as a result of our experience, we kind of wrote up how we approach this, somewhat describing what I just gave you. And we say, if you got 20 or more people that you know in your community, we'll help you get it started, but it's yours. So there's no checkbook, there's no 501c3, it's just a movement. Okay? So that would be one application of this listening. Now, if we wanted to control it, we would sit here with a committee, 6 of us, and say, I think we ought to do this and that. That's a great idea. Let's go do that. And we don't listen to the folks that we're trying to serve. The employees we're trying to serve, the customers we're trying to serve. Tom?
I think a real public example of this is been Pope Francis. I mean, if you're Catholic or not, you're just watching this man at work. And in a recent piece on him, they said what he's teaching us to do is how to have conversations. That up until this time, the leader of the organization, the Popes of the Catholic Church, were scripted. Everything was written and then translated into 5 languages, and it was sent out ahead of time. And this is what the Pope was going to talk about, and only this is going to talk about. It very much controlled. You talk about a hierarchical system. Now, what happens is that this man is throwing away the script and engaging people in conversations. Why? Not because it's not his He's paying attention to what is. What are the needs of other people? And interesting to know, if you look at how the kind of pyramidal structure that we have there, how difficult it is to kind of change our thinking in this way. And I had a gentleman last week working that manages a bank in a small town, Sparta, Wisconsin, said, Tom, this stuff is really hard. He said, all of our life, you and I are the same age. We grew up in terms of this is what it is to be the boss. When you get to be the boss, you get to boss other people around. And then it's really difficult for people too, because then they want you to boss them around. So then I say, well, I'm not here to boss you around. I'm here to serve you. You go, no, you're the boss. Just tell me what to do. So there's a whole shifting in the way in which we have to think about ourselves and the way in which we think about the way in which we do our work. So in the servant leadership model, the power doesn't exist in one person. We begin to recognize that everybody in the group has something to offer to the conversation. Everybody here has gifts, abilities, talents, and skills. How do we begin to unleash those? Well, it's through the power of conversation, the way in which you speak to and with each other. And that's what I think that we've been happening, and it becomes rather contagious. Whether it become in an organization where you start with a particular one unit, or whether it become in a city, or whether it become a whole corporation. Dick has run this whole corporation for 50 years on the principle that there's a servant leadership, and now it just becomes part of the culture. So let me give you just a real practical example. We have people in our master's program who have to do a master's thesis. They're looking for people that they could work with and partners in terms of measuring, in terms of levels of safety in the organization, and see if there's any correlation with being a servant-led organization. I can't tell you how many times that they called people and people say, well, no, we just don't have the time. That would be too much of our resources to answer your surveys, and nobody wants. So here they were saying they're servant-led organizations, but because of the resources of time and energy, they couldn't expand. They call Pieper Power Electric. Oh, thanks for calling. What can we do to help you? Well, we're trying to put together this survey and whatever, we're having some difficulty. Listen, we have somebody here that does, would you like some help with that survey? Everything that they asked was anticipated. Somebody that he had never met. Now, do you think that wasn't a job description at Pieper Power Electric? No, it's part of a culture that was built on having its ongoing conversations as to how this is we're going to treat people. And then it became institutionalized. And now this becomes the standard by which they operate. Leadership sets that kind of tone. And that's why we're so excited about this, because we know that it works. It's just convincing ourselves first and then others to think and act in a new way.
Let's have some any questions. We're going to give you some more examples, but questions at this point.
Working in I've worked for several different companies, and working in a firm that is more of the traditional boss subordinate, and as a branch director for Surion Technologies, which was a $6 billion company, huge company, trying to go move them to a servant leader was a big struggle, because I didn't really they didn't buy into it, they didn't know nothing about it, and switching an organization like that and working from behind to implement some of these changes in my own branch was extremely difficult. Any suggestions?
But you use the magic words here. Switching, causing him to change, okay?
Yeah.
Which side of the deal is that thinking? And thank you for sharing that, David.
For me, it was more, well, it could be both. You know, I know what I did. You know, I tried to act as the servant leader, but I was also directing things, so it was more traditional boss subordinate.
That's where we come from. I mean, I was brought up that way, you know. My dad was my dad, and do it my way. But Dad, you know, what do you think if I bend the pipe this way and that way? Well, just do it this way. After you learn my way, then you can do it your way. So it goes on for a year or two. I'm a teenager in high school or grade school. Okay, Dad, now I'm bending the pipe your way. I mean, there's no difference between one way or the other. And I've got it now, Dad. What do you think? Can I try my way? Well, actually, just do it my way. I mean, that's the way I was raised, in the environment I was raised in. The police, they have a bunch of rules, right? And they are there to keep a civil society going. And so if they have a problem, what do?
See the
Go to the rules, and if the rules don't cover it, what do? They go to the city or the governing body and they come up with more rules. And you must comply with those rules. And what do we have? And we got a lot of discipline in this country. We have police. I mean, in every county, you got at least 2 levels of police. You got the county, you got the sheriff, you got the state. And we have more people in jail per capita than any other nation in the world. I don't know. There are other systems. They have one in Canada, where the police go around and they become friends with everybody, particularly teenagers. But they give out positive tickets, it's called. And so if I give you a negative ticket on the police force, I'm required to give out somebody a positive ticket, which is catching somebody doing things right. Now, where they implement that, and then they, of course, when they get to that point, they are listening. They're doing a lot more listening. And when they give somebody a positive ticket, they can't quite believe it. I mean, there are things in our life that you just can't quite believe. Like I went through the TSA line the other day, and they said, "Oh, you've been selected." What does that mean? Go over there. Yeah, you've been selected. You go through this line. What do I do on this line? You don't have to do anything. Do you have any big metal objects in your brief? I got a computer. No, leave it in there. What about this? No, leave it in there. Just put it up on the bag and put it through there and just walk through here. No belts, no jackets, no nothing. Just walk through and boom, boom. That was it. That's quite a change. I mean, for me, I couldn't quite believe. I was asking. I don't want to violate anybody's rules because they are kind of. I've been disciplined in this area. They are structured, and boy, it was just I couldn't quite make the change in my head. I got to the end of the line. I'm still looking back and what is going on here? But they explained it to me after the fact a little bit. So, the police that do this approach, 80% of the court cases for children 18 and under go away. Now, if 80% go away, what does that project to adult crime and everything else? You got 20% of the hard stuff that now agencies can really go to work to help people. So that's an example of reversing the pyramid, you could call that a little bit. But the kids become the informants then. So, and I can give you another example. Institution has 40,000 employees. Big operation. This one person is sitting in one high-tech department of the institution. And he said, I want to be a servant leader. I'm new. What do I do? How do I change the people? I don't like the way everybody is treated around here. It bothers me. I lay awake at night. I said, well, just do what you can where you are. That's all you can do. You're not in charge of this company. You're not in charge of this department. You're not a supervisor. So he started doing that. And suddenly he had other people kind of joining in the behavior. But he still couldn't take it. He just couldn't take it. So he left. And then years later, they went out and found him. He's a particularly talented technical guy. They found him and they pulled him back in and they worked on him. They gave him everything he asked for and he came back in. In this case, the VP of this area came in and said, welcome, you're a god. He says, your reputation here is, and the VP of personnel came in and said, how are you doing? And are we doing everything we said we're going to do? Oh yeah, man, you're treating me royally. And so he went back to his normal mode, but as a practical matter, several years later, he left again for the same reason. They were treating their customers one way, and they were treating their employees a different way. And a lot of dysfunction in the organization. Lots of costs, lots of duplication, lots of people sitting around doing nothing. Very expensive people. But you have the opportunity, if you're mature enough, you just do it where you are. Your neighborhood, your family, where you work, where you do business. That's an awful long answer to a question. It was a perfect question. Thank you. Tom, you want to reflect on that? What do you do when you're sitting in the middle of an organization?
Let me give you because I've worked with people all the time. We believe in these ideas, and then what happens is that when people put them into action and they work, it's like, wow, this works. Veterans treatment courts. Remember Veterans treatment courts? Right now, in terms of our soldiers coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, I think I've mentioned this. We're still at war in Afghanistan. Never hear about it, but we're still at war in Afghanistan. But we're not just at war in Afghanistan. We have families who haven't seen their father or their mother for 18 months, who have been deployed 3 or 4 times in the last decade. And what's happening is that people are coming back with high levels of post-traumatic stress, PTSD, military sexual trauma, and finally, in terms of brain injuries. And what's happening, you come back and you just don't fit. You don't make that transition from the battlefield onto Main Street. I never thought of this. A friend of mine had to explain this to me. But when you're in Afghanistan, you just drive with the pedal to the metal. You could be killed at any moment. So you're racing to get. So you come back, and now you're supposed to just drive 60 miles an hour. And all of a sudden it kind of kicks in because of the brain injury, and so you find yourself in conflict with the police. Now you find yourself in the system, but it's not in terms of in terms of level of intentionality, criminal activity. That's not what's moving at. It's in terms of brain injury. So what's happened at our veterans treatment courts? Now this is what's really interesting. They've taken a servant-led model. What are the needs of the person that's ahead of them? What is it that we can do what's best for the soldier? So together, the judge, the defender, and the prosecutor work as a team, not as adversaries, in order to help heal the soldier. In that way, servant leadership, that's what Greenleaf said, it's not only about individuals, we can institutionalize caring. Now, doesn't that just make a tremendous amount of sense? Instead of taking somebody who has a traumatic brain injury and throwing them in jail repeatedly, saying, what is it we can do to help you to heal? Serving you who've served us. And so you begin to recognize that what happens in servant leadership, there has to be this higher level and there's a purpose. And so what is it that we can do to enhance, serve, and enrich the lives of other people?
Is that instituted here in Wisconsin? Or?
It's instituted, right? It's instituted here in different areas. Oftentimes, they're voluntary in terms of people who want to participate. There's 50 new treatment drug courts taking place right now in this country every 6 months. You know, adding to another layer of wanting to help it within the system. So that would be a specific example of what can take place. We work I know a gentleman, David Skolgan, who's taken his festival food company. It's even not been brought to Kenosha, practicing servant leadership. What is it that I can do to enhance and enrich the lives of other people? And now you're working with young people who are coming into a store and on a regular basis having to practice hospitality by saying hello to customers who are with 10 feet of them. He's getting letters from mothers and saying, what did you do with my 16-year-old boy? He's coming home and cleaning his room without being asked. They become part of a culture. This is our standard. We are here to serve. And you will be assessed, held accountable on your willingness and your desire to serve other people. So, we can give you all kinds of examples of how people have tried to take these ideas of Greenleaf and then have to translate them themselves. One last one. Talking with a woman who's working with people in terms of disabilities. As you know, budgets are being cut now for people working in social services. She has a high caseload of people living with disabilities, trying to get more and more people to function independently. She can't meet with all of them individually as she once did. So what she's doing now is meeting with groups of her clients and taking them on the bus, taking them grocery shopping. No longer are they dependent upon her to give individual care. She's empowering people who are disabled to take care of others. Therefore, she's meeting the higher test. Are people becoming freer, wiser, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? Instead of looking at people who are disabled, how am I going to serve you and take care of your needs, looking at you and saying, okay, these are your disabilities, but here are your abilities. Look at your ability to take care of others. Bless you. And that's what has to happen in every organization. How is it we begin to unlock the potential of people to care for, serve, and enrich the whole organization, rather than just to think that it's an executive team that's going to be responsible for all of this. The role of servant leadership is not to create more followers. The role of servant leadership is to create more leaders in our organization, therefore realizing that everybody has that opportunity.
Thank you, Tom. Let's take a look at this list. Let's apply the examples that you've been given. And can you pick out anything on either side, the traditional organization? And we have lots of traditional organizations. They get things done. We don't want to say they're bad guys, but this is the optional. In the examples that you've just heard, can you pick out either side what you've heard, or how one side relates to the other?
Tom just gave an example, number 7 on the right, interdependence.
Number 7?
Yeah. Somebody creating interdependent relationships rather than dependence.
And where would anybody want to be? When you think of terms of that, it's certainly not you. They could be highly competitive, independent, seeks personal credit for achievement. That could be the nurse, the doc, the social worker. Could be the vet. If they get over there, using your analogy, highly collaborative, interdependent, gives credit to others generously. You know, the boss takes credit for the failures, gives credit for the successes. A key here is the word I. If a person uses I a lot, I this, I that, That's a key that they're over here. If they say we, you're probably over here. It's a disposition. Got another one?
Number two,
Number two.
on certain leadership, certain leadership.
And what was the example that you're applying this to?
He gave an example of a teenager having to say hi to somebody within 10 feet, and then coming home and cleaning his room without being asked. That's the way I look at that one. So they feel personal value from being mentored in a positive leadership role, so then they work with others more effectively. And by that, working more effectively with their parents by coming home, cleaning their room without being asked. They're doing other chores and helping out, transitioning from a child into adulthood and being able to take on other tasks and work as a team in a household.
Is if you treat a child like their little adult, before I got married to a kindergarten teacher, that's what she taught me. They end up behaving in a different way than if you treat them like a child. Another one.
Number 4 and 8, in your example with the Canadian police, they developed the accountability by giving out the positive tickets, so the kids become much more positive and view the police as friends and mentors as opposed to the authority figures. And then number 8 takes that to another level. It breaks down the hierarchies.
And actually, I didn't mention it, but the kids become the informants to the police to avoid things that are going to happen in the community. You ought to check over there. There's something goofy going. They'll give us specific information, who, where, and what, to eliminate things that might happen. Very good. Got another one? We have a minute left. Excellent. The real simple one is just look, watch for the eye, and watch for yourself, not for other people. You always got to start with yourself. Am I saying we, or am I saying I this, I that, I that? It's a clue, and we are all in control. You know, the amount of the earth that is free is very limited. North America and Europe. The bulk of the rest of the world has a form of freedom or none. All of South America, all of Africa, China, India, these are not free nations. You're free here. And everybody looks to us for the example. That's a heavy burden and an opportunity for our children.